A freezing temperature of minus 40 degrees Celsius had LSD shivering relentlessly and walking with Primo behind Negrendra through the final highs and lows of the terrain. Primo noticed that Negrendra had come to a halt and was looking at the view in front of them. Primo and LSD joined them. A reflection of Mount Kailash was visible on the surface of the majestic lake. They stood there for a while, admiring and soaking in the serenity. The setting sun merging with the horizon added a striking shimmery hue to the lake's surface, and it seemed that the whole cosmos had simply melted into it. The freshness of the atmosphere around them washed away their struggles and exhaustion. At an altitude of 22,028 feet above sea level, the sight of that abode of purity nestled in the lap of nature left both LSD and Premio awestruck. The mystical lake, round with clear blue water around the shores and emerald green in the center, gave them a moment of bliss. Emerging from the reverie, LSD said breathlessly, "So, we were not headed for Mount Kailash. Where are we?" Primo, still memorized, stared explaining. "This is like Mansarovar. Manas means mind, and Sarovar means lake in Sanskrit, which compounded form lake of the mind. Hindu scripture says that Brahma had conceived this lake in his mind and it received visible manifestation later, thus the name. Lake Mansarovar is a personification of purity, and one who drinks its water supposedly goes straight to the abode of Shiva after death. They are believed to be cleansed of all sins committed over even 100 lifetimes. The existence of such a magnificent freshwater lake at such a height above sea level is indeed remarkable." Both LSD and Primo now turned towards Negrendra, but neither dared to ask him any questions regarding the current standstill they had come to. Negrendra looked at them and read their curiosity. He said, "We are here to search for a word, the first word of the mystic enchantment that will liberate them all. Look for a hideout between the rocks that could conceal our lights and at night. Set up 2 tents and wait for the right time." LSD and Primo silently got to work without asking. The first word of which mystic enchantment to liberate who all. On the eve of the crescent moon, right before sunset, Om opened his eyes after 5 days and looked at Ashwathama, who instructed him to stand and pick up the Vayastra. Om seemed a bit hesitant. Ashwathama smiled and assured him that they would not be hurt again. Om lifted the Vayastra and felt its power coursing through his blood. He had done it. Ashwathama beamed at his disciple proudly and gave him a warm hug. "Well done, Om. Go to sleep now. You have not slept a wink in 5 nights. You need to rest. I shall see you tomorrow at dawn," said Ashwathama, relieving Om from their long meditation. Om obeyed and ordered just the way LSD and Primula obeyed their superior. The sun withdrew and darkness replaced twilight. The temperature of Mansarovar dropped even lower. LSD and Primo were done setting up the tents in an appropriate hideout between the rocks. As they finished, wondering why they were supposed to put up 2 tents instead of 3, Negrendra came and ordered them to both walk with him to the west of Mansarovar. They shared a look and joined Negrendra in the darkening night. The sky was starry, but the moon was still not visible. They tampered through the pitch black alongside Negrendra. LSD took out a torch, but before she could switch it on, Negrendra stopped her. "Light is celebrated only due to the fear of the dark. Without evil, goodness has no value." As Mansarovar was the calmest of all lakes, even in the worst climatic conditions, serenity draped the air around them till the sound of the waves rippled through the quietness. They advanced a few more steps. "We have not come here for Mansarovar or for the Kailash Parbat," said Negrendra, moving closer to the sound of the waves. As they walked on the west bank of the Mansarovar, Primul and LSD wondered where the sound could possibly be coming from. The crashing of the waves grew louder with every step. After a few minutes, they felt as if they had reached some vast shore. Negrendra stopped and looked up into the sky. LSD and Primo wondered what Negrendra was searching for. They had been waiting patiently for almost an hour when the sky began to brighten slowly with moonlight, and then emerged the moon in its perfect crescent, illuminating the land around them in a silver mist. LSD and Primo's eyes fell upon the source of the sound of crashing waves as Negrendra addressed them. "We have come here for the first word. It was another lake they were now standing close to, its shore covered with beautiful but poisonous euphorbia flowers that grew amid the sand and gravel. Narendra explained further, this is Rakshastal, also called the Ravana Lake or the Lake of Demons. Rakshastal was created by Ravana for the express purpose of garnering superpowers through acts of devotion and meditation towards Lord Shiva, who resided on Mount Kailash. He would make a daily offering with one of his 10 heads as a sacrifice to please Shiva. Finally, on the 10th night, when Ravana intended to offer his last head, Shiva was moved enough to grant Ravana his wish to harness superpowers. It was on a crescent moon night that his wish was fulfilled, and so that the lake acquired the shape of the crescent moon. Tonight, all the planets and the moon are aligned in their exact same positions as that night. Thousands of years ago, it was the same night, the same month, with the same moon in the crescent shape when Ravana met Shiva here. Rakshastal is said to have a close resemblance to the moon. The desolation of the lake is often compared to the emptiness of the moon. Mansavar remains tranquil and undisturbed forever, whereas the much smaller crescent-shaped Rakshastal is always turbulent, irrespective of the weather, while Mansavar excludes an inviting aura and bounteously gives away its water for bathing and drinking. No one even dares to come near the adjoining Rakshastal. They are sacred by its tempestuous appearance. Even touching the water of the Rakshastal is strictly prohibited. Narendra took off all his clothes and started walking naked into the freezing water alone. With half his body submerged in Rakshastal, he turned and ordered Premal to get ready. Premal opened the bag and he had with him and took out a diver suit. Narendra started praying as Premal wore the suit. LSD opened her bag and gave him 2 underwater bombs before he entered the forbidden water. Narendra instructed him further. Mansavar and Rakshastal are divided by a thin neck of mountains here. The neck has been distinguishing the names and natures of these waters for centuries, but not anymore. Go and search for the weakest link underwater and break it. You have 3 hours at most. The search of the first word can start only after your work is over. We have to get the word tonight before the moon sets. There is no second chance, and so there is absolutely no margin for error. 3 hours it is. See you on the other side. Premal followed the order and strapped on his oxygen mask before he plunged in. He turned to look at LSD and then dived in expressionlessly. Narendra stepped out of the water and walked to LSD holding his clothes. He got dressed and walked back to LSD behind him. She was keeping track of Premal on a monitor that she held in her hand. A glowing dot denoted Premal's movements and exact location. Deep in the dark waters, Premal found the weakest spot and started digging the tunnel with an advanced and powerful earth auger. He dug nearly 20 feet in approximately 2 hours. He found a natural cavity in the waterbed where he could plant one of the bombs whose blast would create a massive impact. He fixed the bomb and swam back with the detonator in his hand, maintaining a safe distance. While Narendra meditated on the placid shore of Mansavar, waiting for Premal, LSD's heart was racing with every passing moment, her eyes fixed on the monitor. It indicated the giant wall between Mansavar and Rakshastal, and Premal's position in the water near it. Narendra continued to meditate with closed eyes. Suddenly, they felt the earth under them tremble. LSD grew tense, but Narendra opened his eyes and stood up, beaming at Mansavar, expecting to see Premal any moment, but LSD's monitor displayed something else. Premal dove back into the water and swam to the location of the blast to check if the work was done. It was not. The wall between the legs had sustained the blast. He checked his watch and knew the time was running out. He touched the wall and with his wave scale measured the thickness, which was yet to be penetrated. The remaining thickness was greater than that of the recently destroyed wall. He immediately pulled out the second bomb, planted it at the deepest point of the newly formed hole, and detonated it. LSD and Narendra felt another quake. This tremor was just a little stronger than the last one. The tension plastered on LSD's face was now visible on Narendra's forehead too. 3 hours were almost up. Narendra's eyes went to and fro between the moon and Mansavar, which was still unruffled. and there was no sign of Primil resurfacing. He was still in Rakshastal because even the second bomb had failed to destroy the wall entirely. Now it was just Primil and his tools underwater. Without wasting any time, Primil started digging further to break the final layer, which seemed like a never-ending task. His oxygen supply was getting exhausted rapidly, and so was he. Nagrendra signaled to LSD. She took out another denotator and her diving suit, but realized that Primil was running out of time. She simply ran into Mansavar and dove in without the suit, clasping the bomb and the denotator, following the monitor signal, which indicated Primil's exact location and depth. LSD was right in line with Primil, who was on the opposite side of the wall. She was out of breath and started choking, but continued fixing the bomb and finally pressed the denotator. But in her haste, she could not distance herself from the explosive. It exploded. The impact hurled LSD into the depths of the lake, being into the mouth of it. Primil came flowing in with the first vicious wave of Rakshastal into Mansavar and saw LSD unconscious and drowning. He desperately treaded the water, inched closer to her, and caught her sinking figure. The wall had finally collapsed, and the waves of the fierce Rakshastal started destroying the silence of the serene Mansavar forever. The lake that was once as calm as the gliding moon was now transformed into an intense lake filled with lashing cacophony. Nagrendra became the first man to witness Mansavar loving its revered existence and dissolving completely into a high waves of Rakshastal for the rest of Earth's life. If it is to be believed that Mansavar and Rakshastal were the symbols of good and evil respectively, then that night the evil had disputably defeated the good mercilessly. In a few moments, Primil emerged from the water, dragging LSD by her hand to the shore, her body as limp as a corpse. He laid her down and immediately gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Nagrendra rushed to find Primil, performing CPR on LSD. LSD gasped loudly as she came back to life. Nagrendra pulled Primil away from her, handed him another set of oxygen cylinders, and showed him the crescent moon that was rapidly descending, ordering him to quickly get back in the water with him. Primil saw the sinking moon and knew that he had to follow Nagrendra's command, so he left LSD on the rocks of the shore. When LSD opened her eyes, she saw Primil and Nagrendra entering and then disappearing into the giant waves of Mansavar. To her, it felt as if Mansavar were fighting its lost battle of existence with its last breaths of peace. The luminous crescent moon was directly above them, shining at its brightest, as if conveying the occurrence of something extraordinary. They swam into the depths of the water, where Nagrendra gestured to Primil to turn his palm towards the moonlight and warned him that his hand should remain absolutely steady. As Primil followed the instructions, he felt an unbearable pain as soon as the rays touched his palm. Turning it red like an almost molten iron rod, he writhed in agony and could barely control the scream, but managed to keep his hand still until a part of his palm actually melted. The light penetrated and bored a hole through his hand. The scattered moon above his palm changed into a concentrated beam of light. The light refracted and fell at the distant spot of their right. Nagrendra followed the beam to the base of the lake, and there he finally found what had brought him there. Bright blue flames were dancing slightly above the seabed. He swam closer to the flame and spotted the glowing letters of the word that he had been searching for all this while. The word read Avanasi. As Nagrendra touched the glowing word, the letters disintegrated and turned into fireflies. They resembled the bursting sparks of fireworks against the dark sky. Nagrendra gazed at this astonishing phenomenon underwater. The sparkling fireflies then entered Nagrendra's body, and he fainted. Primil picked him up and returned to the shore, where LSD stood waiting. They each thanked the other for saving their life. As LSD discovered the wound at Primil's palm, Primil also noticed that his hand, with which Nagrendra had touched the word, was shining like foremost in the moonlight, as if all the fireflies had seen in the deep, silent water had been trapped inside his hand. It was an implication that Nagrendra had consumed the word Avanasi, which meant indestructible. Nagrendra opened his eyes and saw that the moon had set. The sky was now speckled by the stars alone. He had succeeded in his very first hunt. LSD and Primil stood right by his side while Rakshastal roared with the sound of the waves crashing on the shore of a dead Mansavar, as if applauding for Nagrendra. He stood up slowly and saw Primul's ferociously burnt palm. Butterflies can see a range of ultraviolet colors invisible to the human eye, said Nagrendra as he placed his glowing hand on Primul's palm. As he did that, the hole started filling up and was partially healed. LSD! Clean and cover the recovering room. It will be fine in a few days, Nagrendra instructed. He then went towards one of the 2 tents put up for the night. LSD and Primul stood there, waiting their next set of orders. Right before entering his tent, Nagrendra said, LSD, as you're ovulating tonight, it is the perfect time to fertilize your egg. I want Primul's child from you in the month of Kartik. You have 9 months. Tomorrow we leave before sunrise. We have more words to hunt for before LSD's child is born. Nagrendra took a swig of water from his round metal bottle as he went in, leaving LSD and Primul standing there stupefied. Now they knew why Nagrendra had ordered them to set up only 2 tents. LSD broke the silence and said, Hi, we have not been introduced properly. Though I cannot tell you my name yet, you deserve to know that LSD is not the real one. So what's your story? Primul shrugged. I don't feel that way about you. Neither do I. LSD smiled amicably before continuing. He has asked us to produce a child, and thankfully falling in love is not part of the natural procedure of getting pregnant. The thundering wind and screaming waves continued, tormenting the hushed silence of the night as they entered the tent.